Okay, good afternoon. We're continuing our discussion of Ethics of the Fathers, Chapter 2, Mishnah Zion. This is the third or fourth time we're going through this Mishnah. It's a very long one, filled with a lot of material. We're up to the last few lines of the page. But first, let's go back. After listing a whole bunch of negatives, if you have too much of this or too much of that, that would be a negative thing. It then goes into the positives. If you have a lot of Torah, you have a lot of life, a lot of yeshiva, you have a lot of wisdom, a lot of counsel, you have a lot of understanding, a lot of tzedakah, a lot of charity, you have increase, and a lot of peace. And at that point, the Mishnah continues with the words, if one acquires a good name, he has acquired something for himself. If one acquires for himself knowledge of Torah, he has acquired life in the world to come. So let's go back and try to understand what exactly is the rabbi, the sage, trying to teach us. If one acquires a good name, he has acquired something for himself. Where does good name come into this? So the most commentaries explain that this is a continuation of what it said before, that if you increase charity, the more tzedakah, the more peace. But not just does it bring more peace, it brings you a better reputation. People who do a lot of good things, but they don't necessarily benefit others. You do a mitzvah between you and God, so there's no direct benefit to others, although there is benefit. I'll soon talk about that. But when you give tzedakah, there's direct benefit. In the Mishnah, it says that there are certain things that a person does that not only will reward you in the world to come, but you can get some of the dividends in this world. In other words, if you do a mitzvah between you and God, there's no guarantee that you'll get rewarded in this world. The Talmud says the reward will definitely come, but it could come in the next world. But there are certain mitzvahs that you do where you benefit people in this world, that the reward will also come in this world. Not the full reward, but the dividends, the interest will come in this world. So this seems to be an echo of that same idea, that if you give a lot of tzedakah, not only do you create peace in the world, but you also acquire for yourself a good name. There are dividends in this world. People look up to you. People respect you. People see how special and good you are. That is the benefit, the dividends that you get from tzedakah. Now, there's no question that when you do another mitzvah, a mitzvah between you and God, let's say putting on tefillin, prayer, study of Torah, or any other mitzvah, a mezuzah, tzitzis, and we have plenty of those between you and God, those don't have a direct benefit, but they do have an indirect benefit. Every mitzvah we do does affect the world in a positive way. For example, the mitzvah of mezuzah is a protection. We do it because God said so. God wants us to put a mezuzah on the doorpost of our home to always remember God's presence. But when we do that, the Torah itself tells us that it will bring long life to yourself and to your children. It'll protect your home when you go in and when you go out. And the same thing is true about the mitzvah of tefillin. It says when you put on tefillin, you protect the soldiers who are fighting in the land of Israel. Even though you're thousands of miles away, it has that effect. And likewise, every mitzvah you do, but the direct benefit, where you can see the cause and effect, that's when you do something that benefits others. And that's the connection between tzedakah and what's the direct benefit that it gives you, it acquires for you a good name. It enhances your reputation. Some say that it's not just talking about tzedakah, it's talking about everything over here. You learn more Torah, more yeshiva, more counsel, and also more tzedakah. That all gives you a good name. And what does this good name do? You acquire it for yourself. What does that mean? Everything in this physical world that we have, and we acquired it, we paid for it, doesn't guarantee that it will remain with us. Everything that we own, we could also lose. We could lose it either in this world, or if a person passes away, it's no longer theirs. It goes on to the next generation. Nothing in the physical world lasts forever, and therefore it's not really ever yours in the full sense of the word. We use the word "I'm the owner" in a relative sense, compared to someone else. I'm the owner of this house or of this car, to the exclusion that others have less of a right to it than I do. But I don't have an absolute right to anything, because everything is subject to change. The one thing that's not subject to change is the tzedakah that you give. That tzedakah is there forever, and that good name that you acquire is yours and will never be lost. It's there for posterity. But then one of the commentaries goes a little deeper. When it says over here, you acquire, if one acquires a good name, he has acquired something for himself. What he means by that's what defines you. How do you define yourself? Many people will define themselves by what they do for a living. Someone once asked Rabbi once asked someone, how are you doing? Or what are you doing? And he said, well, I do this job from 9 to 5. He says, I didn't ask you what you're doing to support yourself financially. I asked you, what is your life all about? Your life is not about your work, although sometimes your work could be a work of tzedakah. Then you're very lucky that your work is not only something that is temporary, but it's connected to something that is a mitzvah, something where it helps others. That's why people who are involved in charitable organizations, the Talmud says that they have a greater merit than the people who they get to give charity. So if you're someone who influences others to give, even though you yourself didn't give, although that's usually not the case, you get a greater credit than the person who actually gives, because you influenced others. So that's the ideal situation to be in, where your livelihood is not only a livelihood for yourself, but it's a livelihood that involves others as well. So when you give tzedakah, and likewise any mitzvah that you do, you acquire it for yourself. This defines who you yourself are. This is what defines you. But it's not enough to do good in order to get this benefit of acquiring something, that it becomes yours and it defines you. The Mishnah was always mentioning the words, the more you give, the more counsel, the increase of your charity, the increase of your Torah study. It's always adding on, because in life, it's not enough for a human being to rest on his laurels, whatever laurels are. It's not enough for a person to be complacent or satisfied. I did a certain amount in my life, and now I could rest, I could retire. You could retire from your job, you can't retire from life. And the definition of life is growth and increasing whatever it is that defines your life. Your life is not defined by your work. So if, let's say, you're a business person, that doesn't define you. That's something you do, unless your business is about helping others. And when you give charitably from your business, you elevate the whole business, so the business becomes something holy. But the definition of your life is what you do to make your life worthwhile and worthy. So if you just rest on your laurels, if you just cut out a comfortable niche in your life and you don't add to it, that life is only a half of life. I mentioned this many times, that the word for life in Hebrew, chaim, is a plural word. And there are many explanations for it. I can think of at least 4 explanations why it's plural. One of the explanations is based on a talk the Rebbe once gave about the significance of a birthday. What is a birthday? The day you're born. What's so special about the day you're born? You were alive before you were born. You were, when you in your mother's womb, you were also alive. You also existed, and you in a living existence, and that's why Judaism does not allow abortion under normal circumstances, contrary to what you hear people in the Jewish community say, that Judaism is pro-abortion. Judaism is anti-abortion. There are cases where abortion might be necessary to save the life of the mother. We won't go into the specifics of that, but you're alive very much before you're born. So what's the great thing about your birth? The answer is, before you're born, it's not yours. Your life is given to you by your mother. You're nourished by your mother. It's you get oxygen through your mother. You're completely dependent on and subservient to your mother, who's the source of your life. You can't call it your own. But when you're born, the second you're born and you're no longer connected to the mother, you're now on your own. You're able to do your own thing. And that's what a birthday is, and by extension, every day of our lives, we consist of two elements. There's the person who I was until today, but that's already a given. That's already accomplished. That's the part of my life that's given to me. When I was born, it was given to me by my mother. Now it's given to me by what I did yesterday. Yesterday I was a different person, and I'm living on what I accomplished yesterday. So today, for my life to be complete, I have to add on something in a positive way. Then my life has this duality, plural. But if I only live on what I had from before, then I'm only living a half a life. Half of my life is existing because I'm depending on what I did until now. So I'm like a fetus in my mother's womb. That's still, you're alive, and it's still a positive thing, but it's not enough in order for you to claim that you're really chayim, that you really have life in the plural sense. So when it talks about how you acquire a good name for yourself, that this defines you, in order for it to be defined, it has to be something that you do to earn the title of Chaim, of really living, because you added on to what you were yesterday. You had a question?
I was just going to say, I think one of the explanations why Chaim is plural in Judaism is because Torah in the Hebrew language was given by God for human beings. And the only place where it is life is from God's perspective. For human beings, everything is, we're interdependent, there's a multiplicity, and so it's life, so that God is teaching us to recognize that it's just not this life, that it's other lives. And so that's why I think when God created the word Chaim, He made it plural for the human being to understand respect for all life.
Right. There are many reasons why Chaim is plural. I was only focusing on that one reason. The focus at life, to be completely deserving of the title life, it has to be a composite of what we accomplished until now, what was given to us, and what we add on that's new, that's novel, that's contributing something that wasn't there before.
That's where the number 8 comes in, right? The 8 is the covenant of...
Okay, you could connect it. In Judaism, you could connect almost everything to everything else. Now, here the question arises, acquiring a good name, is that why we do good things? Because we want to have a good name? Is that the objective of doing good? You would think that, based on what it says in Ethics of the Fathers, we don't do things for reward. Yes, there is reward, but we're supposed to be a little bit more sophisticated. When we study Ethics of the Fathers, it's not about what's mandatory, but what is better than mandatory, that goes beyond the requirements of the law. And going beyond means that you do things for altruistic motives, because this is what God wants you to do. This is the right thing, not because you're going to get reward for it, you're going to get a good reputation. And throughout Jewish history, we have legendary stories of great people who went to extremes to conceal their goodness. People shouldn't know that they're good people, that they're special people. They went out of their way. Now, if no one's going to say that it's a bad thing to give tzedakah or to do other good deeds with a desire of reward to get a good name. But that's not the ideal. We always have to know what the ideal is, even if we're not ready for that ideal. But there are so many legendary stories. There's one story it's a very interesting story, and it leaves us with some questions as well. But it illustrates this point in the most extreme way. There was a great Hasidic rabbi whose name is Zusha, very famous, and he was very poor as the shul mouse. You think only they have mice? And he had a daughter who was coming of age to get married. And to get married, you have to have money. You have to give a dowry. You have to get clothing for the wedding. And he didn't have a penny to his name. So he's once visiting his teacher, Rabbi Dovber, known as the Maggid of Mizrich. And that rabbi had money that was given to him to distribute to charity. And let's assume that it's 200 rubles. That's what he needed for the expenses for the wedding. And he gives it to Zusha. So Zusha now has money to marry off his daughter. He's walking outside and he sees there's a big commotion. People are surrounding someone and everyone is saying, what can we do to save him? And he inquires what was going on, what happened. He said this man had just returned from a business trip with all of his earnings. It took him a year to collect, and now he's returning to his family, and apparently he had lost, or someone had stolen his little sack with all the money. And he fainted when he realized that he has not a penny. All his year's work were gone. And they try to revive him, and as soon as they revive him, he says, "Did you find the money?" And they say no, and he collapses again, and his life was in danger. So Zusha said, "Well, how much did he say he had?" 200 rubles. He says, "Well, I found it." And he gives 195 rubles. And the man was revived, and he looks and he counts the money, and 5 rubles are missing. And he says, "Where are those 5 rubles? I want those 5 rubles. I had 200, not 195. And Zusha says, "No, that's all I found. That's all I have, 195. So the man says, "You're a thief." And they call the police, and the police are leading him to the prison. And everyone is following the thief, Zusha the thief. And the Maggid, Rabbi Dovber, through the window hears the commotion. He sees what's going on, and he goes out. What happened? He says, "This Zusha has found the money that belonged to that merchant, and he refuses to part with the last 5 rubles. So the Maggid takes out 5 rubles from his pocket, and he gives it to the man. He says, "Drop the charges, and everything will be fine." And they drop the charges. And he calls in Zusha. He says, "Zusha, I know that you didn't find the money, that the money you gave, the money that I gave you. But why didn't you give the full amount?" He says, "I give the full amount, and people would have said, 'Look at this righteous man, Zusha. I did a mitzvah, and in the eyes of everyone, I'm a common thief.'" That's the extreme example. And I'm not telling everyone to follow that example. But that's an extreme example of someone who not only shunned the limelight and recognition and approval of others, but he went to the extreme of making it that people look down at him for the fact that he didn't do the mitzvah right. So why is it that you're interested in acquiring a good name? So I think I touched on this last week, but I'm going to elaborate on it more. In Judaism, there are 2 objectives. There's one objective to do whatever you have to do to elevate yourself, to make yourself a more spiritual, more godly person. You accomplish that through prayer, through study of Torah, through all the mitzvahs that we do that are between us and God. But then there's another objective. The other objective is to do good for the world. And while we do good for the world, it also enhances us. It also refines us. It also elevates us. What should our objective be when we do a mitzvah? Our objective is a twin objective. We want to do the mitzvah to elevate ourselves, but we also want to do the mitzvah to change the world, to make the world a better place. But what happens if you can only do one and you can't do the other? In other words, you can only do something that will elevate yourself, or you could do something that will help others and you won't be so elevated. So throughout Jewish history, there were always different emphases. There were different people who put the emphasis on a different aspect. And I'm going to share a story that illustrates this point. It's going to be a story within a story. In the 1950s or 1960s, I don't remember exact year, every Simchas Torah, the Rebbe would teach a new song. Not songs that he composed, but songs that were sung and were forgotten. And he did this for 10 consecutive years. I was present the last year that he taught a song, and I was standing 6 inches away from him when he taught that song. But that's not the song I'm talking about. The song I'm talking about is to the words of a psalm, of a hymn rather, called Anim Zmiros. I will sing with sweetness to God. It's a very spiritual, uplifting song. And the Rebbe said that the song originated with a Jew who after Yom Kippur did not go home, and he was singing this song, and he was so enraptured by this song that he sang it all night long, and he forgot about eating. After fasting for the full day, he forgot that he hadn't eaten, and he just sang that song all night long. And the next morning, people were coming to the synagogue for the morning services. He was still singing that song. What's the story behind that song? The story is that this man was a very wealthy man, and he used his wealth to help redeem captives. Tragically, in those days, many Jews who couldn't pay their rent would be taken hostage and thrown into a dungeon, and some of them would just be allowed to waste away there, and some of them died there, and some of them just were tortured there, and unless someone in the Jewish community would ransom them and pay their arrears, they would, who knows what would happen to them. So this man would go around redeeming captives with his money. He was very wealthy. And there was one point where he found out about a certain Jewish captive, and the amount of money he needed to redeem him was all his wealth. So he redeemed, he liberated, he sold all of his holdings, and he took the money to save this Jew who was in this dungeon for who knows how long, and he was really in arrears for so many years. And when he gave all the money, he was left penniless. And then when he discovered that the money came too late, the man had died. So now he gave up every penny that he owned, and to the bargain, he didn't accomplish anything. The man was no longer alive. So he was so troubled by this that he went to sleep with very depressed. And he was told in a dream that because of what he did to squander all his wealth to save someone, and at the end he didn't even succeed in that, he has a choice of two possible rewards. One reward would be that he'd get back all his wealth, and maybe even more. The other reward would be that he would have the privilege of experiencing paradise while here on earth for one day. Which do you want? He chose the latter, to experience paradise. And that's when he started singing that song, and he composed the song. And he was so enraptured by it because he had such bliss that no human being could ever experience being physically alive. But he had that experience, and it lasted till the next morning. So someone asked the Rebbe, someone didn't know the whole story, so asked the Rebbe if the Rebbe himself composed the song. And the Rebbe says, no, I didn't compose it. In fact, it was composed by someone before the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, who was not influenced by the Hasidic movement. Because if he had been influenced by the Hasidic movement, he would have chosen the wealth. Why? Because nobody benefited from his blissful experience of paradise. If he would have gotten back his wealth, he could have saved who knows how many more lives. So sometimes your focus should not be what's best for my spiritual, altruistic goals. I want to become a higher, more spiritual, more altruistic, more idealistic person. That's wonderful. But what's even more important is what you do, how others will benefit from it. And sometimes if it means that I'm giving charity and I acquire a good name, and it's not altruistic, that's even superior to doing tzedakah secretly when nobody knows about it. That's superior to what Rabbi Zusha did. Now you could ask the question, why didn't Zusha know this? He was a Hasidic rabbi. I'll remain with that question. But the main point is that you sacrifice your own spiritual benefits in order to help others, in order to contribute to the world, even if it means that you're going to become famous. And that's the reason why great people became famous. It was a sacrifice on their part. When the Rebbe's father-in-law passed away, and the Rebbe was the most likely successor, he refused it. He adamantly says, it's not for me, I don't want it, I'm not worthy. And when they pressured him, he would break down crying. And once he threatened to run away and disappear, no one will ever find him again if they keep on harassing him to become a leader. And finally, after a year, he accepted the leadership. And someone told me that this person's father asked another great rabbi, Rabbi Hutner was his name, who knew the Rebbe because he would study together with the Rebbe before the Rebbe became Rebbe, and he asked him, do you know if the Rebbe will accept the leadership? He says, I don't know, because the Rebbe has two opposite characteristics. On one hand, he has a tremendous sense of responsibility, and he will never shirk an opportunity to fulfill his obligations. And at the same time, he shuns the limelight to the most extreme. He's someone who cannot stand ever being exposed for any of his qualities. He just would rather be a hidden person. I don't know which of his two characteristics will prevail. His sense of responsibility or his sense of humility that he doesn't want to be the limelight. And obviously the Rebbe's sense of responsibility, which was a sacrifice to become famous. The Maggid of Mezritch, who I mentioned before, Rabbi Zusha's master, was a secret tzaddik. Nobody knew how great he was. He kept everything to himself. And once he did something, I'm not going to go into what it was not a sin. You don't worry about that. But on his level, it was considered to be something that he shouldn't have done. And he tells his wife, I did something wrong, and now we're going to get a terrible punishment. What will the punishment be? I'm going to have to become famous. You didn't run, none of these people would run to become famous. They would run away from it. And it was the greatest sacrifice for them to do it. But nevertheless, they did it. They chose it in the end for the benefit of everyone else. So yes, acquiring a good name sounds like it's a very self-serving thing. I want a good name. Everyone wants a good reputation, but if that good reputation means that people will learn from you, and people will say, I want to be like that person, I want to be the kind person that person is, I want to be the learned person, I want to be the compassionate person, and all the other qualities, that good name, even though it sounds like selfish, it's the most selfless thing that an idealistic person can do, to become famous in order to do good. At the end, I'll play that song if you want.
A niggin from Gan Eden?
It's a niggin from Gan Eden, yes. This man obviously composed as he was inspired by that feeling of Gan Eden. Then it says, one who has acquired for himself knowledge of Torah, he has acquired life in the world to come. Even a good name doesn't last forever, unless you're really very famous. There are thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who did great things when they were alive and they had a good name. But a good name doesn't last forever. That's why I always bristle a little bit when I hear a eulogy that this person is no longer here, but his memories will last forever. That's not true. Memories do not last forever. Memories fade very, very quickly. So you don't want to just be left, the only thing left of you is some memories, because those memories are not forever. Your good name is not forever. You go to any cemetery in Europe, there were thousands of people buried there. All of them had good names when they were alive, but nobody knows who they are. You could read, even if you read the tombstone, you don't know who that person is. But there's one thing that does remain forever: the Torah that you study. The Torah that you study becomes yours, and it's there forever. It lasts in this world, and it lasts in the next world. What does it mean that it lasts in the next world? Our sages tell us that when we leave this world, and after we go through the purification process, and we end up in Gan Eden, in paradise, what do you do in paradise? There's no golf, there's no tennis, there's no movies, no television, no internet, no food. What?
And pussycats.
Right, none of those things that bring people joy and happiness exist there. What do we do there? We study Torah, but on a higher level, on a deeper level. Torah can be studied on many different levels, and depending on what level you reach, that will determine the quality of the study of Torah in paradise. So the Torah that you study here continues into the next world. If someone...
We study in the Celestial Academies when we sleep, right?
Yeah, that's when the soul leaves this world during sleep, because it partially leaves. It's 1/60th of death. If you're lucky, it enters into paradise, and you get a little bit of a taste of that, if you're lucky. So the good name may last a little while after a person leaves this world, for the next generation or so, unless you're extremely very famous. You're a Maimonides. Maimonides will never be forgotten, because he left an indelible mark on Jewish life and Jewish history and Jewish scholarship. Rashi and Baal Shem Tov and many of the others like that. But those are only a few amongst tens of thousands whose reputation maybe have been there when they were alive, but it's no longer there. But the Torah they studied is there forever. And that's another explanation why Chaim is plural. Life is plural, because there's the life of this in this world, and there's the life of the future. And if you're lucky, the Talmud refers to the patriarchs that they saw their afterlife while they were alive. They didn't have to wait for their afterlife to experience the blissful state of paradise. Like the story of that man in Gan Eden for one day, the patriarchs had this perpetually. So when a person studies Torah, they get a taste of the afterlife, and they have this life as well. They tell a story of a rabbi, an American rabbi, who was raising funds for his yeshiva, and he comes to this wealthy man, and he saw that this wealthy man, while he was very charitable and had led a good life, but did not study Torah. So he asked him, "What are you doing about your life?" He says, "Well, I'll earn the future life through my acts of charity." He says, "I wasn't asking you about your future life. I'm asking you about your life now. If you don't learn Torah, you're missing so much pleasure in this life. There's nothing more pleasurable than the study of Torah to a person who's initiated into it. So if you want to have both lives, this world and the next world, you get it through the study of Torah." Now, it says over here, you acquire Torah. If one acquires for himself knowledge of Torah, what is it? It should have said, if one studies Torah. What does he mean by if he acquires Torah? What's the difference between studying and acquiring something? When you acquire something, it becomes yours. So the Talmud gives actually a practical application of it. You're a king. And the Torah requires honoring a king. When we had Jewish kings, you had to give him honor. What happens if the king is humble? And he should be humble. And he says, no, don't stand up for me. Don't give me this honor. I'm a regular person. You can't do that, because it's not his honor. The king, you don't honor the king. You honor the one whom the king represents. He's God's ambassador on this world, because God wants human beings to run the world, God ran the world, it would be a perfect world, and that God didn't want a perfect world. He wanted an imperfect world, created imperfect people, and our goal is to make the world perfect, to perfect the world from a point of view of being imperfect.
For the bread of shame. Yeah.
Right, so because if we didn't do it with our own effort, we wouldn't appreciate it. You don't appreciate something that you didn't earn. So the king is not really representing himself. He's representing the heavenly king, the supreme king of kings, the Holy One, blessed is he, as we say in our prayers. So he can't forgo his honor because it's not his honor. What about a Torah scholar, someone who's steeped in Torah knowledge and has tremendous knowledge, and people will honor him? Could he say, no, don't honor me, because it's not me, it's the Torah that you're honoring? Yes, he could say that. Why? Because if he's really, truly worthy of the title Torah scholar, he acquired it. It became his. He is one with the Torah. He identifies with the Torah. It's his personal accomplishment. And therefore, he could forgo his honor. He doesn't have to accept the honor. He could say, don't honor me because I don't want that honor. But it's not him, it's his Torah that they're honoring. Yes, but the Torah becomes his. And another way of looking at it, when you study Torah, when you do a mitzvah, let's contrast it with any mitzvah you do. You give charity, it's your physical body doing it, but it's not part of you. When you study Torah, where does the Torah go? It goes in your brain. It becomes part of you. King David, when he refers to Torah, he says, your Torah is in my innards, in my intestines. What did he mean by that? He meant to say, just like food that you ingest becomes part of you, once you eat your food and you digest it, you can't separate the food from the person. It becomes part of you. It's part of your flesh and blood. The same thing is true with the study of Torah. If you study Torah properly and it's absorbed by your mind, it becomes an inseparable part of your very physical being. Doing a mitzvah, as great as it is, doesn't become part of you. It's something you do. Here is something that you become. The Torah defines who you are, because it's not just something you are because of what you do, it's something you are because of what becomes part of you. So that's what he means by when you acquire Torah, when you learn Torah in a way that it becomes part of you. There's another meaning to the word acquire in Hebrew. The Hebrew word is kana, which means to acquire, to purchase. But it also has another meaning of measuring. If the Torah measures you, then you acquire the world to come. What does that mean if the Torah measures you? If you are measured by the Torah, how are we measured? We're measured by the information that we have in our mind, by our experiences, by the things that we read and hear, the books that we read, the newspapers, the television that we watch, the movies that we watch, everything that we access through our senses, through our five senses, that's what measures everything in our lives. But most of influences in our lives are not real, are not true, are not ideal. We have to sort them out. We have to filter them out. But when you're measured, everything that you in your life that you do is measured by the Torah. The Torah measures you, then you acquire the world to come. Then you're no longer limited to this world, a world of falsehood. You become a member of the world to come, which is the world of truth. One of the ways that our sages describe this world as opposed to the next world, this is the world of falsehood, and the next world is the world of truth. In this world, we could deny, we could say that we didn't do something wrong when we did something wrong. We could lie to others and we could lie to ourselves. In the next world, there's no lying. Everything
that's all tied to the fall of Gan Eden, right?
In Gan Eden, in paradise.
That's why this is a world of lies, because of what happened there.
Because there's an admixture of evil in everything since the sin of the tree of knowledge in Gan Eden. Yes, that's true. So, the world, if you want to access the world of truth, you have to measure your life by the Torah standards. If something doesn't make sense according to Torah standards, then you know it's not right. It's not true. And if you measure everything by Torah standards, you're exposed to truth. And the more truth you're exposed to, the more you will appreciate and benefit from the blissful state of the world to come, even as you are alive in this world. There was once a chassid who was a brilliant guy, and he mastered the whole Talmud. Talmud is a huge repository of wisdom, very intricate, very complex. And there are people who mastered the whole Talmud. And he came to his Rebbe, and he told him in Yiddish, "Ich hab gelernt die gan Shas." I learned the whole Talmud. He meant to say, I learned it and I know it. So the Rebbe looked at him, he said, and in Yiddish it's a play on words. It says, "Was hat Shas dir gelernt?" What did the Talmud teach you? You studied the whole Talmud, you learned the whole Talmud, but what did you learn from it? Did the Talmud measure you? Well, you're just learning it. So you could learn it, but you don't measure by it. You don't measure your life by those teachings, because you measure everything by your own personal interest, by your own selfish interest, by your own vices. So someone could study Torah and it's not helpful, because they're approaching Torah from their own perspective that's flawed, not by the perspective of Torah. The Talmud actually says that if a person studies Torah and he's not refined, Torah could be a potion of death. The Torah could be used as ways of dominating others, of showing off, of all sorts of negative things. People could use Torah the wrong way, because the Torah is being mastered by them, but the Torah doesn't master them. They master the Torah, but the Torah doesn't master them.
So when you say that the Torah measures someone, it's actually the validity of one's righteousness. Is that what you're saying?
When you're measured by the Torah, then you're in good shape, yes. Any questions? So we finished this Mishnah finally. It took us 4 weeks. And believe me, if we were on a deserted island and her name was Reuven Krusovich, that's Robinson Crusoe in Yiddish. And all you had was this one Mishnah. That's all you had. You could spend your life studying it in depth. And that's true about almost any part of Torah knowledge.